Let's talk a little bit about first and third person. So, third person is, of course, when we say he went there, she said that, he did this, and first person is I did this, I said that, I went there. Now, there's absolutely no better or worse one. You can pick whichever one you want in your stories. There have certainly been amazing books written in third person and first person, and plenty of them. I prefer first person, and I've always written in first person. I have experimented with third person, but in general I always write first person, and most of my favourite books to read are in first person, so I'd like to talk a little bit about that today. Now, the first thing I should do is talk about why third person is really good. So to say he did this and she went there, third person is really good because you're not confined to the character's head, which means you can show a room before the character even comes in. You can show what the bad guy's doing, even though there's absolutely no way that the main character could know that because they're in a completely separate place. We've got the opportunity of showing what's going on elsewhere. There are other benefits to third person, but in my opinion that is the main one. You're a bit more external. You can talk about things that the main character couldn't possibly know. And the last thing I want to do in this video is to annoy people who love third person, because I think third person's great. Some of my absolute favourite books are written in third person. It's just a personal preference, and I'm sure you have a personal preference as well. For me, the convenience of third person doesn't outweigh the opportunity to really get inside the character's head with first person. When I read a story, I would rather the character tell me their story rather than some omniscient narrator. It sounds really weird, but sometimes when I'm reading third person, I feel like, who is telling me this story? So there's this stuff that's happening to this person, but who is talking? Who's telling me this? And of course there's no real answer to that. It's sort of the author who's talking to you. But if I'm speaking to someone in a pub, it's much more engaging to me if they're telling me a story about something that happened to them rather than a third person story about something that happened to someone else. I'm much more engaged when it's the people themselves telling me the story. So when you're writing first person, obviously you're saying, I did this and I said that and I went there. The reader is almost the person themselves. They are very much in the character's head, living out what that character is living out. Every single thing that the main character is feeling, we're feeling it as well. We know exactly how they're feeling because they're telling us directly. We're not being told by some storyteller, we are being told by the person themselves how they're feeling. The downside, of course, is that we can only really talk about what's happening internally in that character. If there's something that that character couldn't possibly know, things that are happening outside the walls of where they are, for example, we can't really talk about those things in first person because there's no way the character could know it. There are ways around it. You could have multiple first persons, which can be really tricky to pull off. You could have a first person and a third person narrator. I've heard people say that if a book is written in first person, then you know that they're going to live to the end, because otherwise how are they telling you the story? But I don't think that's necessarily the case. I've certainly written books that are in first person and the main character dies. They are narrating it up to the point where they die. And then I can either sign it off with a letter, another first person, very briefly, a third person, something like that, just to round it off. Or even the main character themselves, just speaking, not necessarily from beyond the grave, but just speaking. It doesn't matter whether they're dead or not, they're still speaking to us. I think in first person you can really let the character's voice shine through. If you've got a really unusual main character, really quirky main character, which is always a good idea, that quirkiness can really shine through because they are the ones saying it. You can achieve that in third person, but it's a lot trickier because it's another person, a narrator, who's describing what this character is doing. I do want to stress at this point that there is absolutely nothing wrong with third person. It's great. It's really good at doing what it does. And if you write in third person, amazing. And if you always want to write in third person for the rest of your life, that's great. All I'm doing really is talking about why I love first person and why it works for me. I think first person is a really great opportunity to really get inside that character's head, because that is almost literally what you are doing. Every single thing that they're going through, you can't escape it because it's happening to them. And that can feel really claustrophobic, But we can't escape our own bodies. We can't just become someone else. We can't see things that we can't see. We can't see what our enemies are doing. We can't see things outside of the walls, unless obviously we look through a window or a door. But we don't know things we don't know, and sometimes that can create more of a sense of reality. A bit more personal, a bit more real, because we only know what that character knows. And sometimes what a first-person narrator tells us isn't always the truth. It could be an unreliable narrator. They could be lying to us. They could be hiding things. They could be skewing things from us, and maybe later on we'll find out that they actually lied to us. I think that can be a lot harder in third person. Not always, but you're more inclined to trust the third person because they are the overall narrator. They are the storyteller telling you the story. There's no real reason why they should lie to you, but it does happen from time to time, and it can work really well. My advice would be, if you don't know which one you prefer, third or first, experiment with both. If you find one that you definitely feel is your one, stick to it. Don't ever feel like you need to branch out because so-and-so said this, or you really like this book. You don't have to. You can just do whatever you want. And if first person is what you love, then stick with that. And if third person is what you love, then stick with that. But if you're really not sure, try both. And I guarantee you that one will just feel a little bit more natural than the other. There's a black cat that wants to come in. So I hope you found that useful, guys. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more writing content, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.